Where does your favorite NFL team rank during the summer of the upcoming 2024 NFL season? What's going on, football fans? It's Mitch back here with another NFL power ranking video. This time, my training camp 2024 NFL power rankings. And my reaction to the Michael Florio power rankings over on NBC Pro Football Talk. Yup, that's why I'm making this video. That's why I'm ranking every single NFL team, because you hit, and Gronk spiked, the like button. So, thank you. Now it's time to give you my updated look at all 32 NFL teams. My opinion on which teams are the best, which teams are the worst, which teams will be fighting for a playoff spot. This is not based on 2023. This is based on everything I know about these teams entering the 2024 NFL season. Free agency, the draft, the new coaches, the new quarterbacks, and everything in between. So, if you want more power rankings, Gronk spike the like button, and don't forget to subscribe for unmatched content on all 32 NFL teams. Let's go, man. Let's rank every team in the NFL from 32 to 1. Let me know in the comments if I'm right or wrong about your favorite team. Let's start at number 32 with the Washington Commanders. That's right. I have a new bottom team in the NFL. My previous power ranking had the Denver Broncos. This one, the Washington Commanders. I think this is a combination of a few different things. First, the Commanders are going through an entire regime change, and typically that does not allow a team to be successful, especially in football, right away. They have a new quarterback. They have a new head coach. They have a new offensive coordinator. They have new management. They've got new ownership. There's so much new in Washington, which is also a reason to believe in them long term. So it won't always be bad, Commanders fans. But I do believe 2024 will be a rough start to the Dan Quinn Commander era. Jaden Daniels was not my favorite quarterback in this class. He was barely third. So I will say I'm much lower than others on Jaden Daniels. And I actually view the going from Sam Howell as the starter to Jaden Daniels as the starter as maybe a slight downgrade. That might be crazy to say. I don't know, but that's just my opinion. I would also say that going from Eric Bieniemy to Cliff Kingsbury might also be a slight downgrade in terms of offensive play calling. I would say that Dan Quinn provides more of a defensive expertise than rather Ron Rivera or anyone else that was working on that staff, Jack Del Rio included. Was not a big fan of the Commanders' defensive scheme in recent seasons. But what they did have was a potent defensive line. They no longer really have that. They do still have Jonathan Allen. They do still have Daron Payne. But their edge rushers still leave a lot to be desired, despite the signings of Dorrance Armstrong and various other Cowboys, on top of Clelin Ferrell, who was a role player for the 49ers last year. Linebacker position is greatly improved with Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner, and I think both vets will contribute to this defense right away. But the secondary is not my favorite. I did like the addition of Jeremy Chin, but the corners really don't allow Dan Quinn to play what he's been really doing well in Dallas, which is a lot of man coverage and mixing up a lot of different coverages in terms of what they're doing in the back end, playing man in their base, and then kind of flexing off of that man coverage. He might have to go back in his Atlanta bag and play more cover 3, because he does love to play single high to have that extra man against the run, but I don't think the personnel allows him to play man coverage like he did in Dallas. So that's a concern, on top of not having a Micah Parsons is also a pretty big concern. So I just think the Commander defense, on top of having a rookie quarterback, a pretty weak offensive line overall, that combination just makes for the overall worst football product, in my opinion. A bottom 10 defense, a bottom 10 offense. I do like Terry McLaurin. I do think Jahan Dotson could take a step forward, but the running back position is nothing special, even by adding Austin Eckler. Zach Ertz is an old man at tight end, and really they don't have a lot after those two receivers on offense. So Yeah, I just don't see how this team really comes out on top in many games because they don't have a dominant defense. They don't have a dominant offense. I think another year of high draft picks will definitely help the Commanders get to where they want to go. But they just don't have the package for me that makes me believe that they're not going to be one of the worst teams in the NFL. At number 31, I have the Denver Broncos, who was previously, as I mentioned, the worst team in the NFL for my money. But the difference between the Broncos and the Commanders, in my opinion, now is that at least I believe in the Broncos coaching staff, and they've had a full season to kind of install their approach, their offensive scheme, their defensive philosophy on their players. And I also think I did underrate to some degree what Denver was able to do last year. But I will say, I think Denver has lost some talent. I think Denver is not, really sexy on offense. They don't have a lot of explosive ability outside of Courtland Sutton. The O-line, I think, is decent enough. There's definitely a difference between them and the Commanders in that regard. I think that's one of the stronger areas when you're talking about guys like Garrett Bowles and Quinn Miners being on the offensive line. I think Sutton is their go-to weapon. I think Javonte and I believe it's McLaughlin, the little man in the backfield. These guys can mix it up in the run game, but again, nothing special there. Sean Payton is a really good play caller historically, but maybe he's lost his touch, especially when it comes to a post-Drew Brees offense. And this offense is likely to be ran by, congratulations, the recently married Zach Wilson, or engaged Zach Wilson, I should say. And also maybe Jared Stidham, who's like a good backup, or maybe a rookie, Bo Nix, who is not my favorite rookie. I think like my 5th or 6th rated player in this draft at that position. So it's not a good quarterback team. And despite the coaching on offense, they just don't have a lot of playmakers. Like they're going to be counting on Mims, the second-year receiver. I don't know really who they're going to at tight end. And the defense is nothing special. They don't have a lot of difference makers. Outside of Pat Surtain at corner, they really don't have a special player at linebacker, at edge rusher, even on the defensive line. I like the addition of Franklin Myers. I think that makes them more steady, along with DJ Jones and Zach Allen. I think that's an underrated interior D-line, but none of them are putting up 10 sacks, even 8. I would be shocked. I think that the edge rushers are a little bit underrated in terms of their production from last year, but none of them are Von Miller in his prime, right? So I just look at both sides of the ball once again here, like Washington, where I just don't see a dominant unit. I don't really see how they're going to really win a lot of games because their defense, well coached under Vance Joseph, but they're not going to be able to shut teams down. They're going to probably try to compete through coaching, through, running the football, keeping the game close, trying to win it in the fourth quarter, don't turn it over, all those little things. But when you just don't have the quarterback that can make those plays, when you don't have the playmakers that can step up in those big moments, and you don't have a defense that can really create a lot of turnovers, I just don't know how you're going to win a lot of games. So I wanted to go NFC, AFC for the worst teams in the league, one in each conference, and I think I have that with the Broncos and the Commanders. Next up, we're going back to the NFC with the Carolina Panthers as the 3rd worst team in the NFL. I think Carolina will be slightly improved from the previous season. I think Carolina did improve on paper for sure. Like, you add Robert Hunt, you add Damian Lewis, 2 steady, nasty run-blocking guards. Hunt, he has shown his versatility. He has shown his value to Miami that I think will miss him this year. I think the offensive tackles are in pretty good shape, especially considering if Kwanu can take a step forward, but Moton is a really good player. And I do feel like the running backs are a little bit undervalued, especially after adding Brooks through the draft. I think Hubbard had a decent season last year. Miles Sanders is still on the roster. And the receiver position is greatly improved. Xavier Legette in the first round. You add, obviously, Deontay Johnson, just for a guy that can actually get open and separate and create some magic for Bryce Young. And Bryce will be in year 2, so he'll be more confident, more composed. I think he's in an offense that is going to use him a little bit better, make him more comfortable. Dave Canales is a really good personality, a calming, younger voice for Bryce to lean on. So I think all those things are positive for Carolina offensively. Defensively, I don't think they're very good. I definitely think they could have gotten worse this offseason in terms of, okay, they lost a really potent pass rusher in, obviously, Brian Burns. And, Shaq Thompson's a little bit older, injured last year. Derek Brown is a stud, but otherwise, can J.C. Horn stay healthy? They don't have many elite players. Yes, Jadeveon Clowney, DJ Wonham, these signings will help. I think they also signed run stuffer Ashawn Robinson. A couple guys that I like, but they're more so like attachments. They're more so secondary additions to an already great defense, as Jadeveon Clowney was with Baltimore. I don't really see them as difference makers. So to me, I really feel like this team will improve because their offense just won't be a complete disaster. They've got better play calling, should have better quarterback play. Offensive line will be competent. Receivers will be competent. So they'll be able to move the ball better. And I think their defense was always sneaky competitive. It just wasn't great. So that's why I have Carolina as the third worst team. I think they're slightly better than they're given credit for. They're just like an easy team that everybody likes to put last just because they've been bad, right? And I don't think that's fair. Next up, at number 29, the New York Giants, who I really considered putting at 30 or 31. Like, I'm not going to lie here. I think the Giants are quite bad. And Giants fans who have been following my channel know that I don't mind the Giants, despite them beating us twice in the Super Bowl. I really don't hate the Giants at all. I've actually found myself being a Giants fan in recent seasons, especially the year that they were able to get to the playoffs under Daniel Jones and Brian Daboll. I really enjoyed that year. But man, I just feel like this team is not very talented. Like, overall, the O-line is one of the worst in the league. I think it's certainly bottom 5, even with the improvements of coaching and some additions that I like Jermaine Illuminor, who's a very steady right tackle. I still think they're bad. Like, honestly, I still think they're bad. Tight end Darren Waller leaves, which was one of your more athletic weapons. He's gone to rap, I think. Running back Saquon Barkley's gone, and you replace him with a pretty replaceable player in Devin Singletary. And at wide receiver, I think that's the lone area on offense where you really got better. Malik Neighbors adds a dimension to this offense that previously they didn't have, which is explosion, big play capability, yards after catch. Odell Beckham 2.0 in New York, in my opinion, even played for LSU. So the receiver core, all that should be better. Daniel Jones, I think, is a little bit better than most fans consider. Like, he's athletic, he can move, he can run. If he's protected, he's not a bad player. It's just that mentally, he's lost in space at times. He just doesn't read things quick enough. He's a very slow-minded player. But athletically, he's not bad. So I think that the Giants overall will be more steady on offense, considering the offensive line coaching, the receiving core, those things have upgraded. But I really think the defense is in some trouble. Like, I like the front seven. I like Brian Burns. I like especially Dexter Lawrence. I think that those two are going to have a great season, and I'm excited for that. Kayvon Thibodeau, I think, is a tad overrated, just as Lawrence Taylor said. And I like Okereke a lot at linebacker. But otherwise, like, safety, you've got a rookie in Nubin who's likely to start. Like, older players potentially, like Jalen Mills, might get a role in this defense. Pinnock, who is not bad, I guess, as a role player. But the corner positions, like, Banks is really going to have to step up for this secondary to be anywhere close to competent. Like, they are in trouble at the perimeter corner spots. So, yeah, I don't mind the defensive coordinator change. It just feels like in the front end, they're pretty powerful. But in the back end, they're a disaster. So considering their offense is going to be very hit and miss, if not one of the worst in the league, I think that their defense is also going to be shredded at times. So I'm really low on the Giants this year. Despite me enjoying their coaching staff overall, I still think the Giants are not a very good team. At number 28, I've moved my Patriots down one spot from the previous rankings, mostly just because of quarterback and offensive line. Those are kind of the two things that I'm not quite sure what's going to happen. Now, my confidence lies in New England getting better this year because I think once Drake May plays, he's simply going to be a more athletic, competent player at that position than they had last year. And otherwise, it doesn't really matter. Will there be a little bit of decline in terms of the coaching capabilities? Perhaps from Bill Belichick to a rookie in Gerard Mayo. But let's be honest, Belichick did not have many great moments the last couple of years. I will say that the defense should be one of the best in football this year, and I wouldn't be shocked if it actually made them a competitive team. Because with Matt Judon back and Christian Gonzalez back, you take the number one defense that didn't have those players from week 10 to week 18 last year. They were the number one defense. They were the second best run defense in football last year. You add those two pieces, and all of a sudden, you're in every game. But The thing I come back to is that the thing that I've just been overlooking in previous seasons, expecting results from this team, is what's going to happen with the play calling on offense. Is the offensive line good enough and consistent enough? And do the receivers and playmakers help the quarterback? On top of that, I do think it will be kind of far below average quarterback play, especially considering if it's Jacoby Brissett. We don't really know what Drake May would bring to the table, but it's going to be inconsistent. He is a rookie who is very young, so he's going to have erratic moments, but he could also have some special moments. So I actually think the Patriots are underrated right now, but I also have to be kind of realistic with my expectations for my team this year, expecting this to be a rebuilding year where they're maybe pretty close in a lot of games, but they just don't have the offensive firepower or consistency to pull off a number of them. So that's why I have them at number 28. At number 27, I have the Cardinals, who are almost the exact opposite of the Patriots. Like, their defense is kind of trash. It might be the worst in the league, but their offense is actually fighting and vying for a top 10 position, in my opinion, this year. Like, I like their play calling overall. I think Kyler's dimension of, first of all, playing on a team that is expected to get scored on a lot, so it means he can play free and loose. He's going to run around, he's going to create, he's going to make plays. He's a year removed from the big injury, and you should expect a faster, quicker, twitchier Kyler Murray with something to prove on top of that. He gets a new number one weapon in Marvin Harrison Jr. He does have one of the best young tight ends in football in Trey McBride. James Conner is playing career football. Their tackle position is solidified with Jonah Williams and Paris Johnson in year 2. I think that the run game is really underrated thanks to Kyler's legs to be able to create off of the handoff. And then guys like Wilson and guys like Dortch, I think, are really going to take steps forward within this offense. So I think the offense will be pretty darn effective and control a lot of games in potential upsets. But the defense is what I really worry about. I think the secondary, especially the corners, are very suspect. They don't have a true number one corner, and they maybe don't even have a true number 2 corner. We will see how the rookies turn out. Sean Murphy-Bunting was added to the secondary to help out. The safeties are pretty darn good, but Buddha is not the same player he was maybe a couple years ago. Linebackers are not bad, but the pass rush really is struggling, and I think the run defense will still struggle because they don't have any difference makers in the front 7 that are just going to move people and stop the run either. So yeah, I could see them competing in some games, but their division, just like the Patriots, is very difficult. You know, New England has to deal with Miami, the Jets, the Bills, the Cardinals have to deal with the Niners, the Rams, the Seahawks. All 3 teams in both cases, I think, are way more talented and more well-rounded. So at number 27, the Cardinals, who I think is kind of interchangeable with the Patriots. Next up, I think there's a bit of a tier gap almost to itself with the Minnesota Vikings at number 26. The reason I say that is I think the Vikings proved last year that with great coaching from Brian Flores, their defense can kind of play a little bit. They do have a pretty effective front 7. I think that adding Blake Cashman was a nice little add at linebacker to help the speed of the second level. I think that their linebackers are honestly underrated. Andrew Van Ginkel gives them a nice complement to Jonathan Grenard. I think that fits their timeline better than Daniil Hunter, who is getting a little bit older, but I still think is the better player overall. I just think, going younger in this case for Minnesota was the right move. Defensive line-wise, they're not bad. They're fundamentally sound. They're very aggressive. They will force mistakes. They will get pressures, and they will, get some stops because their safeties are pretty talented. I think that overall, their corner position is just as good as last year, if not maybe a little bit better. And I think Flores is one of the best defensive schemers in the league. So that side of the ball, I don't think is potent or like elite or anything, but they're well coached, they're well designed, and they come to play, and they're physical. And then on the offensive side, they've got a ton of skill talent. They've got a good offensive line. They've got the home field to back it up, and they've got Kevin O'Connell, who's a really good play caller. They've got Aaron Jones, who can run the football, Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, and TJ Hawkinson eventually, who you can throw the football to. And if Sam Darnold is the quarterback, I actually could see him having a sneaky good veteran season where he puts himself into a case for potentially signing with another team down the road or maybe even sticking around with Minnesota. I wouldn't be shocked if this was a season similar to what we saw from Geno Smith a couple years ago where this is able to kind of change the trajectory of his career. Who knows? I could be wrong about that, but just saying. Minnesota, that's why I see them at 26. I see a little bit more potential from them, but again, they're in a very difficult division, and this is supposed to be a transition season for them because JJ McCarthy is supposed to be the guy in the future. This is supposed to be the season that kind of gets them towards where they want to go with him. At number 25, the Tennessee Titans are up next as a team that I see as another kind of tier gap. I think the Titans are maybe a little bit overrated by their fans, but I think they are underrated by a lot of others. Just because I think they're overrated by their fans because I think, they're just expecting Will Levis to step in and be a stud, which I just have so many question marks about. I just wasn't a huge fan of him coming out of college. I thought he was very up and down and all over the place and a roller coaster as a starter in the pros in year one. But he did flash some potential with his attitude, his demeanor, his charisma, his toughness, and then, of course, his arm strength. All things popped out at you when you watched him. Now, the offense is going to be a lot better with offensive line play, thanks to the coaching from Callahan, the draft pick of Latham, and the signing of Cushenberry. I think the receiving core is pretty talented and low-key a top 10 to 12 unit in the league, probably. DeAndre Hopkins is still there, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, Treylon Burks. They've got an athletic tight end and a Okonkwo, and they've got running backs like Spears and Pollard who are home run type hitters. So I'm excited to watch this offense under both Callahans from an offensive line and a play calling standpoint. Now, defensively, I think that the team is a little bit suspect. And so you combine a little bit of a suspect defense, especially at linebacker, safety, maybe even defensive line to a certain degree. I think defensive line has two really good players and then a lot of mid to not very good. I think linebacker is one of the worst positions in football in terms of the linebacker position. And I think safety is pretty below average. Corner is really strong as long as they're healthy. Snead, Awuzie, McCreary. So they should be pretty good there. But I feel like their pass rush is below average. I think their run defense will be kind of below average in the post-Mike Vrabel era. And I think combining that with suspect up and down quarterback play is going to make them probably not as good as Titans fans would hope. But I also feel like they're going to be one of those teams that everything, if it clicks together, they could be slightly shocking. So I'm sort of leaning towards the negative outcome here, but I could see an outcome where they're a lot better than I expect. So that's why I have them at number 25. At number 24, we already did the Minnesota Vikings. At number 24, the Las Vegas Raiders. Raider Nation is probably going to be upset with me. You guys know I love the Raiders, but again, just like the Titans, I just feel like the quarterback position is not up to par in what they need from a consistency standpoint. I think Gardner Minshew is fine, right? He was able to step in for Anthony Richardson last year and keep it afloat, but it wasn't anything special, especially considering Shane Steichen is the most underrated thing in that whole mix, right? Shane Steichen is an extraordinary play caller. I think he's one of the best in the league right now, and I think their offensive line in Indianapolis was a perfect situation for Gardner Minshew to succeed. I think in Vegas, the O-line is improved. I like the draft pick of Jackson Powers-Johnson, absolutely, and I think that they will be overall not a bad unit, but they're not as good as the Colts. On top of that, I think the offensive play caller change was one that was needed, but also I don't think it's going to be like otherworldly type of elite play calling. We're certainly not seeing a Mike McDaniel or Kyle Shanahan shift here. Now, I do think that Zamir White is going to have a nice season as a starting tailback in the league. I think that Devontae Adams can still play. Jacoby Myers is a nice number 2. And I think Brock Bowers is going to have an impact rookie season at tight end. I'm also intrigued to see what they do with the 2 tight end personnel. But that's also something that usually looks better on paper than it does in terms of the actual play of your team. Take it from a Patriots fan. We've been trying to get back to the Hernandez Gronk days for about, 20 years. 10, it's not 20, 10 years. But, we'll see. Maybe Bowers and Mayer can take that crown. I don't know. Defensively, I think they're good. I don't think they're great. I like Christian Wilkins a lot, and that addition is really going to help Max Crosby, who I think is an absolute dog. There's no debating he's the top 5 defensive player in the sport. And I like Kuntz as well. I think the D-line is really underrated. Linebackers are solid. I don't think they're fantastic. I wouldn't expect Spillane to play even better than last year because he was way better than previously at any point in his career. Secondary, I think, is a bit suspect, especially at corner. Jack Jones is a head case at times, and the number 2 corner spot is definitely weak. I think Nate Hobbs is good. The safeties are decent. I wouldn't call them special. So I think the Raiders are probably like a top 15 defense, but I wouldn't call them, and that's a lot due to coaching too. But it's not pure personnel, which sometimes scares me for a little bit of a downgrade in the next season. So I expect a season that's fairly similar to last year, where there may be a little bit more of an underdog mentality. They keep a lot of games close, but they just don't have the quarterback. They don't have the consistency overall to be able to outclass other teams. So at number 24, I have the Raiders. I'd expect them to be average, but probably not a playoff team. At number 23, the New Orleans Saints. The New Orleans Saints are at number 23 on my power rankings. And I don't know what to say about the Saints. I'm going to be honest. Like, sometimes I think they're going to be better than this spot. Sometimes I just can't believe in the hype. And I find myself always kind of being in the middle. Like, Derek Carr is what he is. He's not a good quarterback. He's not a great quarterback. He's not a terrible quarterback. He's somewhere in between at this point in his career. The offensive line, I like the draft in terms of Fuaga and adding another tackle. I do think that they could potentially form a really good tandem in terms of Fuaga and Ramczyk, which makes me believe that Carr could have more time to work in the pocket. But the interior O-line, outside of maybe McCoy, the guards are kind of not my favorite. I do feel like the receiving core is also a little bit lacking outside of Chris Olave. I think Rashid Shaheed is solid, but I would like another piece, rather at tight end or receiver, and it feels like it's lacking. I also think the run game is not great. Alvin Kamara is not a true lead back at this point in his career. He really can't carry the load as a ground player, and I'm not impressed by the explosion of their run game. I just think it's going to be one of the worst in the league. So ultimately, I kind of feel like, I see what they were doing, new play caller and all that. I don't see how this offense really sees a rhythm or consistency. I think they're going to be too reliant on Derek Carr, and ultimately that's not going to lead to an overall cohesive, consistent attack. Defensively, I actually do believe they're going to be pretty good. I do think their defensive line got better, adding a name like Chase Young. I think they're deeper than previous seasons. Granderson's a good player. Brazee enters year 2. He should improve. They've got a good rotation of defensive linemen. Cam Jordan, maybe more of an off-the-bench player now. Linebacker, I think they're also deeper than last year. Adding Willie Gay from Kansas City can take some pressure off Demario Davis. The secondary, Tyrann Mathieu played well last year. Can he keep that up at his age is a question. New starters potentially at safety. Corner, Marshawn Lattimore's got to stay healthy, and if he does, their trio of corners could be pretty impressive and locked down. So I do think their defense will be one of those fighting for a top 10 selection, but overall, I just think that the offense is going to be a bit sloppy and inconsistent, and the defense is deteriorating, getting older with many of their top players. So I kind of see the Saints being, again, an average team like they've been for the last couple of years with little consistency, and probably one of the hardest teams to bet on in 2024 because you're just not really going to know what you're going to get. At number 22, the Los Angeles LA Chargers. Chargers. Justin Herbert, Jim Harbaugh. That's the combination everybody's talking about. But what I've been talking about and leaning into, other people have not been seeing, obviously. Other people think this is a playoff team, a top 15 team in the NFL, and I'm nowhere near. I feel like 22 was honestly maybe as high as I could go. I feel like Justin Herbert is great. I think Harbaugh, really good coach in the past in the NFL, great college coach, but what does he have for the NFL nowadays? I do wonder about that because he is already such a traditional coach. I wonder if his schemes will lead to winning in the NFL now. I do think his leadership will really help. His culture. I think with a quarterback like Herbert, you can get away with having a more traditional coach because the quarterback will be able to elevate other things like the passing game that might be a little bit too simplistic for my liking under Greg Roman, who's going to want to run the ball a lot. But I'm concerned about the receiving core, the tight ends. They don't have a lot of talent around Herbert to really make this thing click and be special in year one. I think this is more of a long-term project than people are considering. I do think the run game is going to be better. I do think the defense should be maybe a little better, but I don't know. Their defense is not very talented, especially in the interior and the middle of the field. They have concerns at linebacker. They have concerns on the interior defensive line. And I definitely think that Joey Bosa is an injury waiting to happen. Khalil Mack can't repeat the last season's success, and Derwin James is getting kind of deteriorating, not as good of a player. The secondary isn't bad overall. I like the safeties when they're clicking, Gilman and James, and Asante Samuel Jr. is one of my more favorite corners. Previous couple of years, he just keeps improving, so that's nice to see. But honestly, like, the Chargers just don't have the talent that they used to have, especially on defense, and they don't really have the skill talent to help Herbert when they really need it. So I just think they need another year to really get themselves in a situation where they're going to be competitive. At number 21, I've got the Indianapolis Colts under Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson. And the reason I have them at 21 is I still have so many concerns about the secondary. The defensive scheme overall is not my favorite, as I've said many times. I think they're too vanilla. I don't like the defense. The Seattle scheme at this point is just so outdated, and I just don't think it works. Like, Gus Bradley is their defensive coordinator. Fundamentally, tackling, like rushing with 4, that's fine. I agree, and I believe in those things. But from a coverage standpoint, from an actual talent standpoint in the secondary, it's just not desirable. I think the pass rush is really good. The run defense should be solid thanks to fast and hungry linebackers and a really solid front. Like, I love the addition of Latu. I think Davis helps them in the run game. Stewart coming back to form with Buckner in the inside. You know, they've got a good D-line. It's deep. The rotation will be there with Kwity Paye, Epicam, Latu, all that. But to me, like, the defense is average at best. The offense is just going to have a young quarterback who's barely played in college or the pros, and that is going to lead to inconsistency. I do think Richardson could be fantasy special, but I don't necessarily think he's going to make the Colts relevant come December, January. I think it's going to be inconsistent. There's going to be turnovers. There's going to be sacks. There's going to be holding on to the ball. There's going to be things that you don't like to see. Inconsistencies in accuracy, timing, all those things. But I do like the offensive line. Jonathan Taylor, I think they're going to run the ball really well. I think Richardson will be a big part of that. I think the receiving core isn't bad. Michael Pittman, I really like. I think keeping him was the right thing to do. Downs should have another solid year in year 2. Maybe he takes a jump. But I don't know, man. Like, the Colts, I wouldn't be shocked if they made the playoffs. But at the same time, I do think they're getting overhyped. So that's why I have them at number 21. At number 20, the Atlanta Falcons. Kind of similar to the Colts. I think that I wouldn't be shocked if they made the playoffs, but I also kind of feel like they're getting overhyped. Very similar to the Colts there. But the difference between the Falcons and the Colts for me, both defenses are not my favorite on paper, but also at the same time, I think that I like the overall coaching staff of the Falcons maybe slightly more, and I do feel pretty darn good about Cousins in comparison to Richardson. I understand that one's young, but both are coming back from injuries. Cousins is coming back from a serious Achilles tear, but he's still Kirk Cousins at the end of the day, and it's not like mobility was really a huge deal in terms of his overall game. He's more about precision, accuracy, knowing where to go with the ball, reading a defense, and I think he's really going to help the Falcons in terms of situational play, overall rhythm of the offense. And I think their play action game and their run game is going to be a deadly combination, which is going to be one of the more elite play action run game combinations with a good, strong, powerful offensive line. That's really going to power them to, I think, a pretty successful season. I'm not going to say they're going to be superb or even playoff worthy, But I do think they're going to be more watchable, a better offense this year, and I definitely could see them making the playoffs. Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier. Enough weapons there, even Rondell Moore, to make this thing work. You do wonder if Cousins will be the same player, especially as last year where he was on like MVP case, like MVP watch, honestly. Like he was going to have career bests in touchdowns and yards last year. So yeah, he was playing career best football, but now Achilles tear, moving cities, moving schemes, moving offenses, a little bit different. The defense I'm concerned about in all aspects almost, other than maybe run defense. I think that the one thing I'll say is Raheem Morris did some magical things with the Rams last year. I just question whether he'll be able to do it with the Falcons. The pass rush is not desirable. You do not have an Aaron Donald character, and the secondary outside of Jesse Bates and AJ Terrell is pretty suspect. So at number 20, the Falcons, just a little bit more of a known quantity than the Colts, but still a lot of questions there. At number 19, the Chicago Bears. The Bears are at number 19. I see more potential with a team like the Bears than I would with the Falcons, just in terms of the athleticism from the quarterback position, the overall offensive explosion, even if it's less consistent than a team like Atlanta, could be pretty high octane. And the defense, I think, is certainly tier above the Falcons. I think the defense for the Bears played really well last year. It is well coached fundamentally. And Colts fans are probably saying, why are you saying that now? Well, here's the thing. I think the Bears have better personnel than the Colts, especially when you consider their secondary. Like, I think the Bears' most underrated aspect of their team is their secondary. Jalen Johnson is an excellent corner. I think that both their other young corners are really heading in the right direction, like Stevenson, a big, long, physical corner at number 2. And then the secondary added Kevin Byard to kind of give them a voice in the locker room in the secondary, to put them on their P's and Q's and cross their T's and dot their I's in terms of the experience that he'll bring alongside a Brisker, who I think super underrated as a strong safety. Linebackers are also great at flowing in coverage when you're talking about Edmonds and then Edwards. Both complement each other well. Edwards fundamentally sound, Edmonds an athletic specimen. Defensive line-wise, Montez Sweat changed the game for them last year, but I'm just concerned that they didn't add enough around him. An interior defensive line like Andrew Billings is fine. In, edge rush, I definitely feel like they should have added another character, and I probably would have put them in like maybe the 7 seed type of situation. I think that their concerns are Caleb the rookie making a lot of mistakes, the defense overall not having the flair in the pass rush to be able to play the way they truly want to play against the biggest teams and the best teams. They'll be fine against bad teams. And I think the offense from an offensive line standpoint will be a little bit hit and miss. I think they're going to have their moments, but But Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift, that's a lot to like. Khalil Herbert, there's a lot to like there about the weapons. Caleb is going to be exciting, but a little bit up and down. So at number 19, I got the Bears, just outside the playoff race for me. At number 18, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who I still have as the favorite, winning the NFC South. And it could go either way between them and the Falcons, and maybe even the Saints, but I feel most confident about the Bucs. First of all, I think the Bucs, you could make an argument, might have the best quarterback in the division entering this year, even over Kirk Cousins, because of the Achilles tear. I think Baker had a great year last year. I really did, especially considering the expectations. They were very low, and then on top of that, he had to replace Tom Brady. Like, that's not an easy thing to do. He was able to come in and be a leader for this team and then put, his body on the line. Like, consistently, the thing you love about Baker is he's tough as hell. He's tough as nails. He's going to go out there. He's going to make plays. He's going to get hit. He's going to make big-time throws down the field. And he really seemed to fit Mike Evans and Chris Godwin very well. We saw guys like in the playoffs, like Cade Otton really step up in that regard. And then Rachaad White had a breakout season last year. I think he's a slept-on running back entering this year. I think the offensive line is better on paper, especially considering they added arguably the best center in the draft out of Duke, and they've had a terrible center position in recent years. Like, trust me, Robert Hainsey has not been the dude to replace Ryan Jensen, who was a stud, and that changed their run game. Like, the last 2 seasons in a row, they've been 32nd in yards per attempt in the NFL. They've been a terrible run offense. So if they can get a little bit more out of their run game, to kind of complement that receiving game with some pretty deep receiving options, I think they're going to be a pretty awesome attack, even if they did lose their play caller in Dave Canales, which I'm a little bit concerned about, but it is a similar scheme, at least in Tampa. Now, defensively, Todd Bowles always seems to do a good job, but they're not a great defense by any standard. I do think their corner position is pretty suspect right now. You do have a second-year pro playing nickelback. You do have CJ McCollum expected to play number 2 corner and Jamel Dean at number 1. Not my favorite combination of guys. I think they're definitely going to be a little bit hit and miss in that regard. But I think that their front is probably as good or better than the last couple of years. Like Diaby really had a nice rookie season, as well as I think Kancey is going to have a huge leap in year 2. He is a potent pass rusher complementing Vita Vea. I think they're pretty deep in the front 7 overall. I think don't sleep on the replacement for, not Shaq Barrett, but they already kind of have that. The replacement for not David, Devin White. Levante David is still there. Another reason not to sleep on them. They still got Vita Vea. They got Antoine Winfield. They added back Jordan Whitehead. I mean, that's a good core in the middle of the defense, right? They've got a very good middle of the defense. I think that KJ Brett, I believe it is, KJ Brett, is the guy that is going to kind of surprise some people in replacing Devin White, giving them a more solid overall linebacker position. And yeah, I think the defense it's okay. I just feel like the secondary, especially corner, is a little underwhelming. Pass rush, pure pass rushing is a little bit underwhelming. The edge rush they need someone to step up. Like, Bulls will send a lot of blitzes. They'll get pressure thanks to their blitzes. But it would be nice if they didn't have to blitz, like they did just a 4-man rush with Shaq Barrett and Jason Pierre-Paul a lot. Like, that would be nice to have that back. Ndamukong Suh, right? He was a beast too in that day where the Bucs were a really good team. So, yeah, I think Tampa's got enough goods to do this again in this division and win about 9 games again. But I also don't think that they really deserve to be ranked in the top 15. I don't think they have enough talent overall. And I don't think their coaching is extraordinary. I think it's one of the weaker staffs in the league, in my opinion. At number 17, the Seattle Seahawks. The Seahawks, I think, really a team that I tried to put higher. It's just, there's one thing that's holding me back from doing that, and that's the offensive line. I continuously say this in every Seahawks video I make. But if the Seahawks had an offensive line, I'd be so much higher on this team than I already am. I think Geno is a good quarterback, but I definitely feel like he is one that is a lot a product of his surroundings, right? He was a backup for such a long time, but I think he has a good arm. He is accurate. He knows what to do with the ball. He is fairly athletic. He's good in the pocket, but he's not great at extending. He's not great at playing under pressure. Those things definitely need to be a little bit better, but DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Tyler Lockett, Kenneth Walker, Noah Fant. That's the core, like, 11 personnel offense. That's really good. Like, that might be one of the best skill position groups in 11 personnel in the NFL. If they had an offensive line that could block anybody, especially in the interior, I'd be so much higher. So, and then we don't really know what the offensive play caller is going to bring from the college level, Washington to Seattle. Like, that's a huge question too. So overall questions on the offense despite the talent. Defensively is where I'm really excited. I think their pass rush is going to be a lot better than people expect, starting with Mafe and Nwosu on the edge, and then, of course, Leonard Williams, Draymond Jones, and Murphy in the middle. I think that is one of the best interior trios, if not the best, in the NFL. I also like the addition of Jonathan Hankins to help them get bigger in the inside against the run, and I think that their linebackers are going to be very steady for them. I like Jerome Baker. I always have. And I also think Dodson had a great year last year. I also think Devin Witherspoon is going to put himself into maybe even, this is maybe crazy, Defensive Player of the Year consideration this year. I'm really that high on him. I like Julian Love quite a bit. And we'll see, what they can get out of the other cornerbacks like Woolen, if maybe he can have a bounce back. But McDonald, very high on him. Think he's going to do big things in year 1 and potentially even get the Seahawks into the playoffs. One thing to consider is that my power rankings aren't solely based on, predictions. They're just power rankings. So a team that I don't have in my playoff prediction might actually be higher than a team that I do. Seattle is a team that I might have in the playoffs, but you have to consider, schedules. And I don't consider that in my power rankings. At number 16, the Jacksonville Jags, who you could make a strong argument should be number 15. I actually think it's very interchangeable. But at 16, I have Jacksonville. I think that the most slept on thing about the Jags is their defense entering 2024, and specifically the new coordinator Nielsen, who they get from the Falcons, former Saints defensive mind. And I think he was the defensive coordinator for a season there, if I'm not mistaken. But he's a really good coach. I like Nielsen a lot. I like the scheme a lot. I have a lot of respect for it. They add Eric Armstead to the front four to pretty much solidify Roy Robertson-Harris, Eric Armstead, Josh Allen, Trayvon Walker, which is one of the sneaky defensive lines in football this year. Allen and Walker could dominate on the edges, and if Armstead's healthy, we know he can be a very steady all-around player. Linebackers, Lloyd took a step forward last year. Alua Khan is one of my favorites to watch. He is an assassin out there. And I do think the secondary is going to see an improvement thanks to Nielsen's overall scheme. Guys like Andre Sisco, I think, are slept on. Darnell Savage was added to the mix. Intrigued to see how he fits in. Ronald Darby replaces Darius Williams. He was good for Baltimore last year. I think the Jags could have an overall pretty average to maybe slightly above average defense. And their offense really comes down to, is Trevor Lawrence healthy and how do they protect him? And if they do, I could see this offense being the best that we've seen under Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson. Travis Etienne is explosive. Christian Kirk is a good slot receiver. And that Brian Thomas element gets me really excited for Trevor Lawrence and the downfield attack. Gabe Davis also added for that dimension as well. Evan Ingram works the middle of the field. I like the vision for the offense in terms of Davis and Thomas being perimeter, go down the field and jump ball guys. And then also Kirk, Ingram underneath, ETN underneath. The screen game could be pretty potent. The O-line is young, but improving at certain spots, but then also kind of older. Mitch Morse and Scherf kind of add that veteran touch. As long as they don't totally regress and fall off the map, they should be solid. So Jacksonville, I definitely could see making the playoffs as a wild card team, and I don't think a lot of people are talking about them in that fashion. At number 15, the Pittsburgh Steelers, which I think is interchangeable with Jacksonville, but I just have more respect for the Pittsburgh Steelers' consistency. I do think they have a worse quarterback in Russell Wilson in comparison to Trevor Lawrence, but what I like about Russell Wilson in this environment here with Pittsburgh is Russ knows how to protect the ball. He doesn't turn the ball over a lot. He knows when to scramble. He knows how to play in the end of games. He's often clutch at the end of games. And when you watch Pittsburgh play the last couple of years, they're always gritty defensive games. They somehow stay in the game against everybody. And then it comes down to the fourth quarter. And Russell Wilson fits so much of what the Steelers do right now in the recent Mike Tomlin era. And he didn't fit Denver. Sean Payton kind of gravitated towards Russell Wilson, in terms of trying to fix him and trying to do some things that would help him. But at the same time, they were just fundamentally different. Sean Payton wanted more precision. Russell Wilson is more of a freewheeler. And to me, Russ has always been a fit for a defensive coach because of that reason. Defensive guys are not calculated in terms of offensive play calling, and you have to go to 1 to 2 to 3, and you have to throw to the open guy. Russ is more of a baller, a backyard player. And to me, that fits the Steelers right now. You got George Pickens, who's probably never open, but always makes the most ridiculous catches you've ever seen. He could have a huge year this year with Russell Wilson, kind of like Cortland Sutton did last year. I think that the run game is going to be awesome, which is going to complement Russ and the play action and the ability to get outside the pocket. I think Najee Harris and then Jalen Warren, that combo is slept on. I like the O-line, the additions they've made through the draft. Broderick Jones entering year 2, the 2 established veteran guards who are quality players. So I think the O-line is going to be the best it's been since Ben retired, really. And then the defense, I think, is going to be top 10. You've got a great edge duo in Highsmith and Watt. You've got some depth at that position. Pat Queen changes the speed of the front 7. And then Cam Hayward, not hurt, is going to be better. Benton in year 2. Ogunjobi. They've got a really good front 7, a really good pass rush. I think that Porter gives them a true potential number one corner. Minka is a stud. And yeah, they do have a couple questions at like the alternative safeties, the alternative corners in the secondary, but they always have those concerns. They always seem to turn it over, sack the quarterback, pressure the quarterback into mistakes. And Mike Tomlin is a great game manager and a great motivator. So the Steelers could definitely make the playoffs again. I would not be surprised. I just don't expect it to be with Justin Fields. I expect it to be with Russell Wilson because I do think Russell Wilson is the veteran guy they need. They need a guy they can believe in. They need a leader. They need something totally different from Kenny Pickett. They need a stabilizer. And Russ is not special at this point, but he is that, in my opinion. And he fits Arthur Smith's offense a lot better than Denver. And Arthur Smith is so much better than Matt Canada. It's night and day. So to me, that's why I have Pittsburgh at 15. At number 14, the Miami Dolphins. I have the Dolphins at number 14. I could move them up maybe a little bit, but again, like Miami is one of those teams that I just don't know. Like, to me, I think they could definitely be a playoff team again. I think they're very talented at certain spots, but I also have a bad feeling about this team this year. Like, I don't like skinny Tua. I don't like the haircut. I think the offensive line is atrocious. Tyreek Hill is eventually not going to be the best, fastest player on planet Earth. And Odell Beckham being, there, like, what is that doing for me? Like, adding old guys like Calais Campbell and Jordan Poyer doesn't give me confidence about their younger players. The injuries and the returning players of Phillips and Chubb kind of make me nervous. Like, they're just relying on a lot of old guys, and they're relying a lot on coaching on offense to really make these things happen. I mean, Raheem Mostert, Tyreek Hill, Odell Beckham, like Teron Armstead, Calais Campbell, Jordan Poyer, Jalen Ramsey, even the linebackers, Anthony Walker, Zach Sealer. These guys are all old. Like, they're all like 30s, like close to that, right? So that's concerning in the NFL. This is not the NHL, okay? So yeah, like, I like a lot of the on paper, like even Kendall Fuller they signed. He's old. Like, these guys, they've seen their best days, I think. So that's what concerns me. But if it does come together and they can get, the scheme can really help the O-line to stay competent. Tua can stay on the field upright. Teron Armstead can play his 12 games at a high level. The running backs can alternate and be effective. And Tyreek's still Tyreek and Waddle is still Waddle and they're healthy. Then yeah, I could see them winning 10, 11 games. But at the same time, Jets are better. Bills are still there. Patriots, I think, have improved. The division is tough. The conference is tough. Like, a good season for them, considering their schedule, is like 10 wins. So ultimately, they're around like the 15 to 12 range for me. Anywhere in that range is good. I just kind of lean towards maybe the negative. And I often have with them, which is maybe a weakness of mine, but I don't like the vibes with this team this year. I just don't. But I also feel like there's a lot of talent, and it's hard to mess that up. But is the talent too old? That's also a question. Shout out to Javon Holland. He's at least young, I guess. At number 13, the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys are very similar to Miami in terms of vibes. I don't like the Cowboys this year. I am not into the Cowboys this year. They've got similar issues on the offensive line, although I will say that Dallas has proven they can kind of interchangeably replace offensive linemen. One thing they have not proven is that they could replace Tyron Smith. I will say that. For anybody giving that argument, Tyron Smith is different. So he's gone, right? Guyton is in, and we'll see how that goes. I was not a big fan of Guyton coming out of the draft. I do think Tyler Smith will be a stud and Zach Martin will be a stud too. The best guard duo maybe in the league, arguably. Them and the Chiefs, I would say. Or the Browns maybe. But to me, like, center is a question mark. It's probably going to be a rookie. Right tackle has always been a question mark. Can Dak play as well as he did last year? Dak's really good. And I honestly give Dak more of like a certainty. Like, he feels better to me, like more comfy and cozy, and I know what I'm going to get out of him more than like even like a Tua. Like, there's certain quarterbacks, like, I don't really know what I'm getting out of Rodgers this year. I don't know what I'm getting out of Cousins this year. I don't really know what I'm getting out of Lawrence this year, but I kind of know what I'm getting out of Dak. The question is, like, does Dallas, and this has always been the question, does Dallas have enough around Dak for Dak to be Dak? as good as Dak can be, right? So that is kind of the question for me this year, which we haven't had for a couple of years. So I could see Dallas going from a consistent 12-win team to about a 10-win team this year. But the thing with Dallas is I still think they have so many stud players. They still have, right, I already brought up a couple. I brought up Tyler Smith. I brought up Zach Martin. I brought up Dak. I brought up, CeeDee Lamb is next on that list, although he could hold out for a while. I think that Cooks can still contribute. I think Ferguson is a quality secondary option. Running back is a disaster. I will say that if you have to rely on old man Zeke, you're a little bit in trouble, but I guess we'll see what they have in store there. And, I don't mind Tolbert as like a third option, Turpin as a fourth option. They're fine, but I wish they had another receiver, And then defensively, they still have the same problems, but they still have the same studs. Trayvon Diggs returns. Saron Bland is a good player. I like Malik Hooker a lot. I think that obviously Micah is like a game changer. Parsons, that is. DeMarcus Lawrence is a very good player. Adigizua is a very good player. I think that they need to figure out if Mozzie Smith can play. The size of the D-line is a tad concerning. The run defense, especially linebacker position, is concerning. I think they're a team that is going to be kind of exposed against good teams and good coaches once again, and even more so because they don't have the talent they had last year or the year previous. But I think that they're still going to be able to handle bad teams because they most often have a better quarterback and they most often have a better overall talent pool. So at number 13, the Cowboys are just probably what they've been, but maybe a little bit less talented. At number 12, the Cleveland Browns. Talk about talent, speak about talent. Cleveland can go toe-to-toe with any team in football in that regard and facet. But in terms of quarterback play, that's where they just completely fall off the rails, which makes me believe that they could finish last in their division. When you also consider that their offensive line coach, their great offensive line coach in Callahan left to the Titans, which really concerns me. And Nick Chubb coming back from a major injury is also really concerning because he's been the heart and soul of this run as of late. But Kevin Stefanski is a good coach, and I'm tired of anybody saying otherwise because he's two-time coach of the year. He literally made the playoffs with Joe freaking Flacco. I don't know what to say. Joe Flacco is an old man. Okay, he came off the couch. The offensive line is arguably a top 3 unit, maybe even the second best unit in the league, in my opinion. They can power run the football with the best of them, but you do have to worry about the deterioration of the coaching. I do think they have great players. I do think they have great depth, but you do wonder about that. Njoku, Cooper, great combo at receiver and tight end. I like the addition of Jerry Jeudy. It gives me another guy to get excited about in the receiving core. Elijah Moore just wasn't really doing it for me, despite being probably their number 3 this year. And then defensively, they should be one of the top 3 to 5 units in the league. Myles Garrett is game changer. They somehow were able to keep pretty much everybody in terms of, Zadarius Smith, Tomlinson, Shelby Harris returned. The linebackers, JOK, I think is better than people give him credit for. I think the secondary is very, very solid. Delpit, Thornhill are a good combo at safety, and they've got great corners led by Ward, Emerson, Newsome, right? So very good man coverage ability. Schwartz and Stefanski on their side of the ball is one of the low-key, most underrated combos in the sport right now. So I think the Browns have good coaching, a great talent pool, and that's good enough for me to offset the poor quarterback play and have them flirting with 10 wins once again. At number 11, the Los Angeles Rams, just outside the top 10. What I love about the Rams is Stafford, McVay, the offense. That's what I love about the Rams. I think that I know what I'm getting from a healthy Matthew Stafford, and I know what I'm getting from Sean McVay. He's one of the best coaches of this generation and in the NFL, and he deserves that praise. He's a great leader. He's very vocal. He gets the best out of players that you wouldn't really consider to be the best, most talented group of players. And the offensive line is better on paper. Jonah Jackson has been involved. Kevin Dotson was a great addition last year or the year previous. He's really turned into an elite player. And you add Jonah Jackson along with him out of Detroit, and you've got a really sick guard duo. How much longer can Havenstein stay healthy at right tackle and keep playing and keep chugging along? I mean, he might be almost as old as Andrew Whitworth at this point, bro. He's old. And then tight end, they don't really have anything with Higbee kind of being injured. Running back Williams is a really good player, but you do wonder about the depth there. Wide receiver, I think, is excellent if Cooper Kupp is Cooper Kupp, but I do wonder if he still is Cooper Kupp to a certain degree, and the overall health of Stafford and Kupp and the age of those guys, along with the right tackle, is a little concerning, but Puka Nacua is an absolute beast. Demarcus Robinson, I really like him coming back. And the defense, I could see like where people are excited in terms of, okay, yeah, they lost Raheem Morris, they lost Aaron Donald, but yeah, they got better in terms of their secondary. Cameron Curl, Darius Williams, Tre'Davious White, they could all help this secondary out, especially in terms of if they're playing a lot of zone, those guys can ball in that system. I think that Ernest Jones is super underrated. The pass rush with Fisk being added along with the first round pick out of FSU, which his name is slipping my mind, Jared Verse. That's going to be nice. You know, Young is expected to take another big leap. So yeah, it's just a matter of, to me, like, when you compare them to the elite rosters and the elite teams, they just don't quite have the defensive juggernauts, the defensive studs that, let's say, a team in their division like the Niners have, right? And they got the offense, but they seem like a one-sided team to a certain degree. So at number 11, the Los Angeles Rams. Entering the top 10 at number 10 are the New York Jets. Jets. The Jets have, in my opinion, the best defense in the NFL, at least for me right now in June, late June. But I think they could definitely be the best defense in the league. Their defensive line is absolutely phenomenal, led by Quinnen Williams. His brother backs him up at linebacker, who's one of the flying freaks at that position. CJ Mosley is very high IQ and one of the top 5 linebackers, in my opinion, in the sport as well. And you've got Hassan Reddick adding a little bit of edge finesse. Jermaine Johnson is a beast. And they just have so many first-round picks. Will McDonald is there. I think he's going to have a nice little leap this year in terms of his role. And then Solomon Thomas, who sounds like a Batman villain, is still there. And then you've also got Javon Kinlaw, who I could see having a nice little, like a sneaky, if there's one signing they made that I don't think people are talking enough about, Javon Kinlaw was actually pretty darn good for the Niners last year at the end of the year, and I could see him with Robert Saleh taking another step forward in his young pursuit. Secondary, corners are excellent. Sauce is probably the best in the sport. Reed is a very good number 2. Safety is not my favorite, but that's the only concern. Offensively, I just think that people are sleeping on how much talent they have. I get that Hackett is an absolute disaster and a joke and a clown and an absolute bum of a play caller and offensive philosophy guy, but it's Aaron Rodgers' offense. I mean, this is like basically Adam Gase and Peyton Manning. Like, that's what this is. Like, this is just a guy having his guy and, you know, his boy doing his thing. Now, Aaron Rodgers is not what Peyton was at that stage, I don't think. I think Rodgers proved that a couple years ago in Green Bay when he did not play well a couple of seasons ago, and people forget that for some reason. I don't know why. But Rodgers, the thing is, he won't have to play well. He'll actually just have to play like Peyton Manning did in 2015, not 2013, right? Like, as long as he manages the game, checks into the right run, and occasionally throws a back shoulder fade to Garrett Wilson, he'll be fine because the defense is going to allow 20 less points. So as long as he squeaks out 23 on most occasions, he should be fine, right? So Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Mike Williams, you know, Tyler Conklin. Yeah, I mean, they've got enough there to work with. I think if Mike Williams is healthy, like, this team could definitely hit their ceiling. Because Mike Williams, a lot of people forget, like, he's a downfield explosive option, but he's excellent in the red zone. He's got amazing hands and body control. It's a great combo with Aaron Rodgers. I'm excited to see who else could step up. Gibson, potentially, at the end of last year was a little bit interesting. The offensive line, though, is where people are sleeping. Like, Tyron Smith is still there. You know, Tyron Smith is still balling. Like, number 1 tackle against island pressures last year. Like, in terms of island one-on-one blocks, he was the best in the league last year. Like, still a baller. You know, I think that the right tackle situation, Morgan Moses, definitely helps them. I think that Tippmann could develop. I think that Elijah Vera Tucker, if healthy, is a good player. Simpson is a solid player at left guard that they signed out of Baltimore. So the run game is going to be really good, and I think that Rodgers will just be able to complement the defense in the run game through his decision-making and accuracy. So that's why I have them as a number 10 team. They might even win their division. At number 9, the Philadelphia Eagles. I go back and forth with this team more than most teams in the NFL, especially for one that I have so much confidence that they can be great, but also late last year is still in my mind, especially the Nick Sirianni pouty face. That still sticks in my mind. At the same time, I see the blitz coming after Jalen Hurts relentlessly without an answer. And I say, can Kellen Moore be the one to fix that? But if he is the one to fix that, I know that the deterioration in terms of what the scheme was before and the revolution of what it will be now is going to be drastic. And that could lead to a slow start offensively for this team in terms of the scheme and how much of that is really going to play into Jalen Hurts. And I wonder how Jalen Hurts would fare in a different, more complicated, timing-based, accuracy-based, read progression offense. I wonder if Moore and Hurts actually jive and rhythm will be found. Because what was so brilliant about the previous Philadelphia offense is it was so simple, but so effective. And Jalen Hurts was able to play as an athlete and not necessarily as a quarterback, which has been my concern about his career so far. But he certainly has those big game moments. He certainly has those end of the game moments where you're like, this guy is darn effective. This guy is clutch. He is tough. He is able to come through. He's just mentally strong and he's a great leader. And to me, those things come through. But at the same time, I wonder if they do change the offense, if it will have the same rhythm without Jason Kelce. The offensive line, I do think, is going to take a step back from the previous couple of seasons of dominance, but I still expect them to be good. Don't get me wrong. They'll still be top 5 in the NFL. I think Saquon will maybe mask some of the issues that the offensive line might have in the run game just for his ability to slip and avoid other tacklers early in a run. And I am really excited to see Saquon with a competent offense around him with actual receiver threats and actual offensive line play. Although I would have loved Jason Kelce to stay one more year with that young man. Now, I do feel like Hurts, to me, like I'm just not as... I like a lot of his game, but I just wonder in a Kellen Moore offense, is he the top 10 quarterback everyone seems to think he is? Or is he more of like a system-specific player? I wonder about that. Now, A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert are hard to deny. Okay, like that's a really awesome attack. So they're definitely going to be a top 10 offense. It's just like how long will it take? And will it always be consistent due to that schematical difference? Defensively, I do feel they're going to see more of an upgrade, but I just kind of feel like it's going to be what Gannon did. I kind of think Vic Fangio is just basically going to do what Gannon did, because Gannon is a Fangio guy. So like, and they don't really have the talent they did a couple of years ago, at least in my opinion. And a lot of their pieces that they're relying on are rather really old or really young. So there's no real in between. I also feel like their defense is going to have really good games against bad opponents, but really bad games against good opponents because they have one or two really specific weaknesses. I think that their nickel corner position is a little bit not great. If Avonte Maddox can get back to where he was, they'll be okay, but I don't know. He has suffered a serious injury. On top of that, I do think that their safety and linebacker position, the middle of the field of their defense, is a disaster for the most part. Now, Cooper DeJean could change that, and Quinyon Mitchell could really add some flair to the cornerback group. I do think he is the one that will right away be a good player. But yeah, like their perimeter corner was a huge issue last year with James Bradbury. He should be out of there, with Slay being more of a number 2 and Mitchell maybe being a number 1 as a rookie. That's possible in my mind, but if Slay has to be the 1 and Mitchell is the number 2, then that's still fine enough. It's at least an improvement. The edge rush, the pass rush overall, I think is good, but it's not as dominant as it previously was. I think that Huff is a great player and a great add, especially as a pass rusher, but I wonder if he can consistently be on the field in run situations where he might be a little bit weaker. I think Carter is going to be a great player, but he kind of deteriorated in his rookie season down the stretch. I think that we're still wondering if certain players are great players, are going to be good players. Like Nakobe Dean, I don't think is any good. Like Jordan Davis, who I think is maybe okay, but maybe not as good as I thought he would be. Nolan Smith, who's super athletic, but maybe not going to live up to the first round billing. right? Those Georgia players haven't really all the way brought in the stuff, right? Brandon Graham is old. So I do wonder if the pass rush is still the same. Sweat is coming off a down year. Can they find his way back to superstardom? So yeah, I think the Eagles' defense is still going to be a major question mark in a lot of games against good teams and good quarterbacks. But I think their offense is still going to be able to control a lot of games, run the football, and then I wonder about the precision of the passing game. So this is just me kind of picking apart and nitpicking a very talented team. There's no question that they're very talented. They're in the top 10 talented teams. They're in the top 8 probably. But like in terms of actual what we're going to get, I do think there's more questions than people want to talk about. At number 8, the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are not as talented as the Eagles, but I do think they're better, and I do think they'll be a more steady team this year. I also think the Bills are the one team that has been a consistent threat that is being like disrespected this offseason. There's always at least one of them, but the Bills are certainly one of them. Now, Josh Allen is Josh Allen. He is going to get his team to the playoffs and probably win the division. He is just that good, quite simply. But on top of that, I think their offensive line played a lot better than people give them credit for last year. I don't think the Mitch Morse loss will be significant, and I think they'll be absolutely fine on the offensive line. Deion Dawkins is an excellent player, and I do think that McGovern replacing Morse will be just fine. I also expect the rookie from a year ago, Osiris Torrance, I believe, from Florida, is going to be probably a little bit better, as well as Spencer Brown at right tackle, probably a little bit better after a breakout year last year. I like the tight end position. I think Kincaid's going to have a little bit better year. Again, entering year number 2. I think James Cook, year number 3, is going to be a little bit better. So certain aspects of their offense, a little bit better. Khalil Shakir, I think, could have a big leap and a big role in terms of working the middle of the field here. I think that Curtis Samuel is just a better football player than people think he is. I think that Chase Claypool or Mac Hollins could actually be just as fine as Gabe Davis on the perimeter, because now it's Josh Allen throwing to them and not Kenny Pickett or not Aiden O'Connell or Desmond Ridder or whoever was throwing Mac Hollins the ball. And then you also have the young Coleman, who's got a lot of swagger and a lot of confidence. My question is how good of a football player he is. I wasn't a fan in the draft, but hey, maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm not right about every prospect. So, and then defensively, I think is really where they're being disrespected. Like Sean McDermott is a good defensive coach, and they have pretty much all the pieces, really intact in terms of you look at their depth chart, and it's still very, very solid across the board. Yeah, they lost big names like Tre'Davious White, who literally never played the last 2 years. Yeah, they lost Jordan Poyer, who's an old man. Yes, they lost Micah Hyde. Maybe he'll come back. I don't know. He's still a free agent. But, he's not great anymore. Like he was a couple years ago, but he's not anymore. Like Rasul Douglas, Christian Benford, Teron Johnson, that's a great corner trio, in my opinion. That's like top 5 in the league. I think that the safety group is pretty solid. Like I like the addition of Mike Edwards. I've always liked Mike Edwards out of Tampa and Kansas City, Super Bowl champ 2 times. I think Cole Bishop was a great draft pick, and I really like Taylor Rapp. I think the linebackers, especially with Matt Milano, their best defensive player coming back, is a big boost. And I think Oliver, as long as he's there with Rousseau, and then they also have Daquan Jones coming back, I think they'll be fine. They still have plenty of depth there on the defensive line. I'd like them to have one more pass rusher that maybe they could add like at the trade deadline, but at the beginning of the year, I think they'll be fine. So with Josh Allen, a stronger running game, a more cohesive play calling unit in terms of Joe Brady working with Josh Allen, I just foresee a team that's maybe not as talented, but more cohesive, more identity. Yes, Josh Allen reliant once again, but he's Josh Allen, okay? So at number 8, I've got the Buffalo Bills. At number 7, the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers have NFC Championship quality in their team. Now, the question is, are they being a little bit overhyped? That is certainly a question because Jordan Love goes into year 2. Sophomore slump is a possibility, but I do believe in Jordan Love and his skill. I think that he's got a strong arm. I think he can make off-platform throws from any angle. And yes, he does miss some easy layups, but some of the best quarterbacks, even Mahomes and Allen, tend to miss those at times for some reason because of the way they play. I think that the running back position is actually an upgrade for the Packers, going from Aaron Jones to Jacobs, mostly because of health and then also like style. I think Josh Jacobs will help them in January more than Aaron Jones, although maybe against the Niners is the exception. just due to the speed that Jones was able to display in that one matchup. But I still think Jacobs will be phenomenal for the Packers. I think the offensive line of the Packers is always very good and only got better through a first-round pick addition of Jordan Morgan out of Arizona, who's an athletic tackle-to-guard prospect. Luke Musgrave could be really nice as a laxer/skier, was it, out of Oregon State. Really athletic, fast. I want to see him healthy in year 2. And I think Christian Watson is going to be the guy that I expected last year, this year. And I think that a lot of others are very high on Wicks and Reed, as they should be. Romeo Doubs can't be slept on either. So Jordan Love has plenty of talent to work with on the perimeter. I think they've got plenty of talent to work with in the backfield, offensive line. And of course, Matt LaFleur is a very good play caller. And I think the difference between the Jordan Love offense, Aaron Rodgers offense, is the tying between the run game and the play action, which they've dialed up more play action. They've been more aggressive as an offense and therefore more dangerous. They're not as turnover savvy. They don't protect the ball as well. Rodgers, did that really well, but a lot of that came into a result of conservatism in big games, which didn't help them win. Turnovers aren't always bad, guys. Get that through your heads. Defensively, I will say that they are a big question mark because they have a new coordinator. How much is that going to help? Now, his scheme is largely tied to the Niners, so they should be more fundamentally sound. Up front, I think they're going to be less blitz happy and probably more 4-man rush oriented. They do have enough talent to get away with that, especially if Van Ness can take a year 2 jump. Rashawn Gary's very good. Kenny Clark's very good. Devontae Wyatt, I think, is a little bit underrated. And I do like Quay Walker. I think that Cooper was a nice draft pick, although he's a rookie. Same thing to be said about the safety they drafted in Bullard, I believe. I think McKinney is a huge difference maker for the solidifying of the middle of the field secondary. And Alexander, when he's honed in and locked in, is an excellent player. But I do wonder about the secondary depth. There's just small things about the Packers that keep them from true Super Bowl status, true contender status, in my opinion. They could do a couple of things to really put them over the top. That's why I have them below a couple of the teams in the NFC, but they're probably the 3rd best team, in my opinion, in this conference. At number 6, the Baltimore Ravens. A really well-ran organization and franchise that you give the benefit of the doubt every single year. And then you combine that with, okay, they've got a great, proven, probably future Hall of Fame coach in John Harbaugh, in combination with a top 3 to 4 quarterback in Lamar Jackson, the reigning MVP. And yeah, you got yourself like a pretty locked and loaded playoff team. Even, not even mentioning they added Derrick Henry, which is a very exciting thing. Lamar and Derrick Henry is like a fantasy team dream a couple of years ago. You've got Zay Flowers in year 2, Mark Andrews returning, and a defense that was the best in the NFL last year, which probably will drop because Mike McDonald's gone, Jadeveon Clowney's gone, Geno Stone is gone. They lost a few pieces, but they're still excellent in the middle of the field, which is important. Humphrey could take maybe more of a nickel role as Hamilton moves back to safety to complement Marcus Williams. Roquan is there. They like Simpson a lot as a replacement for Queen. Matabuke is there, or BK is there. And, I like Stevens. I like the draft pick out of Clemson. I think there's things to like about the rest of the defense. I just think they're lacking a pure 4-man rush that's really threatening, which is a concern when you lose your coordinator. And I think that overall, losing Pat Queen, losing Geno Stone, losing that production is a big deal. So they're going to be very good on defense. I just don't think they'll be the best defense in the league. And then offensively, I think that why I don't have them top 5, the offensive line scares me. I don't think it's as good as last year. I'm concerned about Stanley's health. I'm concerned about right tackle being a rookie for a contending team. And I'm concerned about their guards. So, yeah, the Ravens, still excellent, top to bottom, but just not quite as talented as last year. At number 5, the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions are, in my opinion, the 2nd best NFC team. The Lions are loaded this year, and I think they're a lot more than just potential this year. Last year, I thought they were potential. I thought they were going to reach as high as they could with their potential, and maybe they even outreached my expectations last year, maybe thanks to a weaker NFC than expected. But This year, I actually feel like they could back that up. Like, if they made the Super Bowl and even won the Super Bowl, I wouldn't be that surprised. And that's how high I am on the additions and the changes that they've made. I think they've gone a long way to improve their biggest weakness, which is secondary, Carlton Davis and Terrion Arnold. I mean, spending premier draft picks and capital on those two players, going out of their way to get depth at the corner position, and, making sure they're ready for injuries and all that sort of stuff, not having to go through the entire depth chart. But I'm really a fan of Branch. I'm a fan of Melon Fonwu, guys that were on the team last year that are in year 2 or 3 this year that are really promising young players. I think that their first-round pick, Jack Campbell, in year 2 could maybe be better this year. Anzalone is a slept-on linebacker, and I do love the addition of DJ Reader to make them one of the best run-defending teams in the sport. I still wish they would have a better number 2 pass rusher, but Marcus Davenport maybe could give them a little bit of a ceiling while not a lot of cost. Aiden Hutchinson is a stud. Their offense is the core identity of the team, thanks to an offensive line that continuously overpowers and dominates opposing teams. And Amon-Ra, Sam Laporta, Jahmyr gives them middle-of-the-field prowess that is unmatched in the NFL, other than maybe San Francisco. You look at this team, and they're a great play-calling team. They're a solid overall coaching, motivation team from the perspective of Dan Campbell. The quarterback is good enough, although not elite, and I think the defense has improved. So the Lions are an all-around football team. At number 4, the Houston Texans. The Texans are obviously more projection than most of the teams in my top 6, but I think it's warranted when you look at their team and you look at their quarterback. CJ Stroud, in my opinion, could win the MVP this year. I think he is that good, and he is ascending in the right direction. I think that the offensive line was the least healthy unit in the NFL last year and should be healthier just based on that doesn't really happen 2 years in a row. Laramie Tunsil is one of the best pass protectors in football. Shaq Mason is there. They've got multiple high draft picks to support CJ Stroud up front. I think Howard was a first-round pick once upon a time. I know that Green was. Scruggs was a second-rounder. They've got a lot of high capital for CJ Stroud. Now, they also have that on the perimeter and the playmaking spots, right? Joe Mixon is Joe Mixon. No, he's really going to be an upgrade over Devin Singletary, especially in those big games where they really need a play in the red zone or on 3rd and 1. He can make that play for them. He can also catch the football pretty well in the screen game and things like that. Schultz is really reliable as a veteran option over the middle of the field at tight end. You got Nico Collins, a pure breed of a wide receiver in the Andre Johnson mold. You've got Tank Dell, who's one of the shiftiest and quickest off the line in football. And you've got Stephon Diggs as like a complementary piece, which is unbelievable considering his recent seasons. So as low as I am on Diggs in terms of Buffalo late last year, him being supported by Nico, Tank, Schultz, Mixon is really going to make him a quality addition to this team. Defensively, you got DeMeco Ryans coaching it, which is a great start. You got Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter, which is one of the best combos in football. You got Danico Autry in a rotation role, which is an excellent role for him. And I think that you had an excellent run defense last year. You also got the addition of Al-Shaair at linebacker, who's going to be an upgrade at that position, knowing that stuff, being athletic, being a difference maker in the middle, complementing Christian Harris. That's a big deal to me. Safety, I think they're pretty good. Petrie is an X factor at that spot. Corner is deep, although not amazing. I think they've got enough to work with, especially if Stingley is a true number 1. So they're fundamentally sound. They're going to tackle. They're going to mix in the blitz with a potent 4-man rush. And yeah, they're a great offense. There's nothing to really not like about this team. This team is the one that's ready to ascend. At number 3, the Cincinnati Bengals, and this was a flip-flop between them and the Texans. It could go either way, but for me, the Bengals are just more of a proven commodity over the last couple of years. Yes, last year they did not do that well. Obviously, they were a 9-win team, and that was without Joe Burrow. So that, to me, is doing very well, right? But at the same time, people forgot about them. But, the years previous, they went to the Super Bowl. They lost that Super Bowl. They went to the AFC Championship. They nearly won it without their entire offensive line. So this year, they've got the best offensive line that Joe Burrow's ever had, and it's deeper than ever as well. That's another point to really think about. They did draft a first-round pick in Mims to complement Trent Brown and to complement Orlando Brown just in case of injury. They do have guys that have stepped in and played in big roles on their bench, right? And they've got Karras, they've got Kappa, they've got the Browns, right? So I love the offensive line. I think that Chase Brown, another Brown, is going to be a key component to this offense this year, along with Zach Moss in the backfield being a nice 1-2 combo that they could switch up in different situations, unlike Joe Mixon. Wide receiving core, obviously you got Chase, you got Higgins, one of the best duos, if not the best, in the NFL. And then we're going to see what this number 3 situation is going to be like. Mike Gesicki could kind of factor in as a receiver / tight end. You've got, obviously, Burton, who is a rookie that's really promising. A lot of people like his skill set as a downfield kind of quick, twitchy guy that they might have been missing, right? Like Boyd, Chase, and Higgins had a lot of crossover in terms of size, but Burton is a different type of flair to the offense that they didn't have. Irwin is reliable. So the offense is going to be potent if Joe Burrow is healthy. He is precise. He is a great leader. He is hungry. I'm excited for the Bengals offense. Defensively, they're very well coached. They're situationally sound. They've got a deep defensive line led by Trey Hendrickson. And the linebacking core is solid, has many years of chemistry. And that's the thing about this defense. They have a very cohesive unit after many layers and years and big games of playing with each other. I think Geno Stone and Von Bell solve the safety dilemma. They've got depth at that position. And I think Cam Taylor-Britt will develop into a true number 1 corner this year. I'm excited to see the secondary because I think that's one of the main dilemmas about this team. But they might win the Super Bowl. I wouldn't be surprised. At number 2, the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers are physical, but they're also extremely, extremely detailed and smart. I love the Niners, and many people always call me a Niners fan, and that's fine. But the reason I like the Niners is they're such a great combination of modern and also retro football. They're able to match up with any team flawlessly because they play physically, especially on defense, and they run the ball really well, but they're also extremely well coached for the modern NFL. And that's what makes them the best team in the NFC since 2019. And they've been to the NFC Championship 4 times now, I believe, 2 Super Bowl appearances, and the only season they didn't is really the injury-ravaged 2020 season. In 2024, it could be their best opportunity yet to win the Super Bowl. I think their roster is just as good, if not better than ever. I think that, Brock Purdy could be the best Brock Purdy and the best quarterback, I would say, not even Brock Purdy, the best quarterback Kyle Shanahan has ever had. Maybe outside of Matt Ryan at his absolute peak. I think Brock Purdy could be the best quarterback that Kyle Shanahan has ever had in 2024 because he actually has an offseason to work with. He's obviously maturing as a man. He got married, but he's also bulked up. He looks physically fantastic. McCaffrey is now in married mode. And I think, the Madden curse, people will say things about that, but he's still the best damn running back in football. Kittle is great. Debo is fantastic, and Ayuk will be there. Don't worry. I also love Ricky Pearsall, and I'm really excited for this offense. I think it's going to be the best in the NFL again. Their offensive line is a little bit of an issue at times, but they're very cohesive, and they didn't lose any pieces. Defensively, I think that people are underrating Malik Collins, who they swapped out for Eric Armstead. I don't know why, but I don't know why people sleep on Malik Collins because he's a good player. But yeah, anyways, maybe Texans fans can help me out. In terms of the defensive line, I think Leonard Floyd is actually an upgrade over Chase Young, especially in big moments, as he's experienced many of them. And Young was very out of place in those playoff games and played terrible in many of them. I would also say that the linebacker position is deeper with Devondre Campbell coming in. Dre Greenlaw will eventually be there. And Hufanga adds that edge that the defense missed late last year. They're faster, they're younger, they're hungrier at safety. The corner position is deeper with Renardo Green out of FSU being added in the second round. And I think that overall, Lenore and Charvarius Ward are 2 of the best in the league. They're one of the best combos in the league. So they're a very complete team top to bottom. There's really nothing that you don't like about the Niners. The only thing that people hate is that they just keep losing in the Super Bowl. At number 1 is the Kansas City Chiefs. I can't not put the Chiefs number 1. I do think there are concerns. Again, like, I'm not just going to go up and down their roster and just praise them, because I think there should be a point of putting a team number 1 and also discussing their pros and their cons. But when you're talking about their cons, I think they still need to solve left tackle. I think they need to figure out their off-the-field stuff in terms of the weird offseason they've been having with Patrick Mahomes eating too many ice creams and showing up fat, Travis Kelce being on tour with his girlfriend, who you know who that is, Taylor Swift, and the Rashee Rice situation, like, I don't know. But, you know, they're the Chiefs. They're a dynasty. They're looking for the three-peat. And if any team in recent history can do it, it is the Chiefs, because they seem to be the boogeyman. They just don't go away. They don't die, right? I want them to die, but they won't do it, right? Now, the defense is still excellent. I don't think it's going to be dominant like it was in the playoffs last year, but I think it will be great, right? I think Chris Jones is a great start up front, and they've got, I think, one of the most underrated linebacking groups in the NFL. I love Bolton, Tranquil, and Chanel, and they all do different things. You know, Karlaftis has been and become a very steady starter that plays a lot of snaps. Dana is a specific player. Omenihu is a specific role player. And the secondary, I think, will miss Snead, but not to a significant degree. I think the safety position is very rock solid with two or three guys that I really like. And I'm especially a big fan of Justin Reed, who I don't think gets enough credit since he's signed there and replaced Tyrann Mathieu. The offense should be better at receiver, but again, you're relying on a rookie, a guy that could be suspended, and then an old man at tight end. So I think it's kind of interesting to see how that might go. But as long as Mahomes is Mahomes and Reed is calling plays, they'll be a top 10 offense in the league, at least. But there is definitely more potential for them to take off this year and score like they did in recent seasons. So the Chiefs should be favored, but they're definitely, I don't think, a team that, now that I feel so good about the Texans, I feel like the Bengals are back, and obviously the Chiefs didn't have to play them last year in the playoffs. I think the AFC is even better than last year, for sure. And I think, Baltimore's still relevant. The NFC, I think, is maybe a little bit better, but honestly not deep. I think the playoff field could be pretty darn good, but I don't think it's really deep. So at number 1, I got the Chiefs. It'll be interesting to see if they can pull off the three-peat. Gronk, spike the like button, guys. Subscribe. Thank you so much for watching for my power rankings. And hopefully I gave you enough explanation on all these to understand where I'm at. Thanks for watching. Peace.